The courthouse doors swung open with such force that dust motes exploded into the afternoon light, and Samuel Stone stumbled down the wooden steps, knowing he had exactly 6 hours to find a wife or lose everything his family had built over 3 generations. It was June 1882 in Fort Collins, Colorado, and the air hung thick with the smell of cattle and summer grass. Samuel's boots hit the dirt of Main Street hard enough to send up small clouds, his heart hammering against his ribs like it wanted to break free. Judge Morrison's words still rang in his ears, each syllable a nail in the coffin of everything he had known. The land deed his grandfather had staked claim to in 1859 had a clause Samuel had never known existed, one that required the heir to be married by his 25th birthday or forfeit the property to the county. His 25th birthday was today, and the judge had given him until sundown to remedy the situation. Samuel ran a hand through his dark hair, sweat already dampening his brow despite the fact that it was only noon. The Stone Ranch sprawled across 500 acres of prime Colorado grazing land, with the Cache La Powder River running through the eastern pastures. His father had died 2 winters ago from pneumonia, and his mother had followed 6 months later from what the doctor called a broken heart. But what Samuel knew was simply the hard truth that she could not imagine life without the man she had loved for 30 years. Now, it was just Samuel and the 12 ranch hands who depended on the land for their livelihood, and the 200 head of cattle that represented not just wealth but legacy. He walked quickly down Main Street, his mind racing through every unmarried woman he knew in Fort Collins. There was Martha Henderson, but she had made it clear 3 months ago that she intended to marry the banker's son. Susan Wright had moved to Denver last fall. The Miller sisters were both spoken for. Samuel felt panic rising in his throat like bile, bitter and burning. The Lady Luck Saloon stood at the corner of Main and Jefferson, its painted sign already fading from the relentless Colorado sun. Samuel pushed through the swinging doors, his eyes adjusting to the dimmer interior. A few men sat at tables playing cards, and the bartender, a grizzled man named Pete who had been pouring drinks in Fort Collins since before Samuel was born, looked up with eyebrows raised. "Little early for you, Stone," Pete said, already reaching for a bottle of whiskey. "Not drinking," Samuel said, though God knew he wanted to. "Pete, you know every soul who passes through this town. I need to find a woman willing to marry me by sundown." Pete's hand froze on the bottle. "That's a hell of a thing to need. Judge Morrison just informed me that my grandfather's land deed has a marriage clause. I marry today or I lose everything." The words came out raw, stripped of pride or pretense. Pete whistled low. "Your grandfather was old man Thomas Stone, right? Came out here in the rush." "He came before the rush. Staked the claim when Colorado was still Kansas territory." Samuel leaned against the bar, feeling the weight of those years pressing down on him. "Pete, I am begging you, is there anyone at all?" The bartender stroked his gray beard, his eyes distant with thought. "Most of the unmarried women around here you already know, unless—" He paused, and Samuel felt hope flare in his chest. "There was a woman came in here about an hour ago. Young thing, maybe 22 or 23. She was asking about work, any kind of work. Said she just arrived on the morning stage from Cheyenne. Where is she now? I sent her down to Mrs. Patterson's boarding house. Told her the old woman might need help with laundry or cooking." Pete leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Stone, I don't know anything about her except she looked tired and hungry and desperate. You sure you want to go propositioning a stranger?" Samuel thought of the ranch, of the graves of his parents on the hill overlooking the river, of the hands who had worked for his family for years. "I do not have a choice. Mrs. Patterson's boarding house was a two-story structure painted white with green shutters, sitting on a quiet street where cottonwood trees provided blessed shade. Samuel took the porch steps two at a time and knocked on the door with more force than he intended. Mrs. Patterson herself answered, a stout woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes and flour on her apron. "Samuel Stone," she said, surprised. "What brings you here in such a state? Pete at the Lady Luck said you might have a young woman here just arrived from Cheyenne. I need to speak with her." Mrs. Patterson's eyes narrowed. "Why?" There was no time for delicacy. "I need to ask her to marry me." The older woman's eyebrows shot up to her hairline, but she had lived in the West long enough to know that desperation took many forms. "She is in the kitchen. Go on through." The boarding house kitchen was spotlessly clean, with a cast iron stove radiating heat and the smell of baking bread filling the air. At the wooden table sat a young woman with auburn hair pinned up in a simple bun, her dress a faded blue that had seen better days. She was writing something on a piece of paper, her hand moving with careful precision. When Samuel entered, she looked up, and he found himself staring into the most striking green eyes he had ever seen. "Miss," he said, and his voice came out rougher than intended. "My name is Samuel Stone. I own a ranch outside of town." She stood up, and he noticed she was tall for a woman, with a lean frame that spoke of hard work and harder times. "Lily Kensington," she said, her voice clear and steady despite the uncertainty in her eyes. "Mrs. Patterson said I might find work here." "I have a different proposition," Samuel said, and he watched her shoulders tense. "I need a wife by sundown today or I lose my land. I do not know you and you do not know me, but I am a good man who works an honest ranch. If you agree to marry me, you will have a home, food, and I will treat you with respect. I am not asking for love. I am asking for a legal partnership." Lily Kensington stared at him for a long moment, and Samuel could see thoughts racing behind those green eyes. Mrs. Patterson had moved to stand in the doorway, listening with unabashed curiosity. "Why would you ask a complete stranger?" Lily finally said. "Because I have run out of options and out of time. Because Pete said you were looking for work and any opportunity. Because I am hoping you are as desperate as I am." Samuel took a breath. "Miss Kensington, I will not lie to you. This is purely practical. But you would be mistress of a good ranch, and I give you my word I will honor whatever arrangement we make." Lily sat back down slowly, her hands folding on the table in front of her. "I left Cheyenne because I had nothing left there. My father died last month, and the debts he left behind took everything. The man he owed money to made it clear he expected me to work off the debt in ways I would not agree to." Her voice remained steady, but Samuel heard the steel beneath it. "I have been traveling for 2 weeks trying to find somewhere I could start over. I have $4 to my name and the clothes I am wearing." "Then we are both standing on the edge of a cliff," Samuel said quietly. "If I say yes, what exactly would you expect from this marriage?" It was a fair question, and Samuel forced himself to think clearly despite the pressure of the ticking clock. "A wife in name and legal standing. Someone to help run the household, though I have a woman who comes in twice a week to cook and clean. Beyond that—" He paused. "I would expect honesty and partnership. I would not force you to anything you did not want. We could take time to see if we can build something real, or we could simply maintain a practical arrangement." Lily looked down at her hands, at the paper she had been writing on. Samuel could see it was a list of some kind, perhaps places she might find work. When she looked back up, her expression had changed, hardened into something resolute. "I want 3 things in writing before we go to any judge. First, if this does not work and we separate, I want assurance I will not be left destitute. Second, I want to be treated as a partner in the ranch business, not just a decoration. Third, you will give me space and time, and you will not force anything physical until or unless I agree to it. Samuel felt something shift in his chest. This was not a desperate waif. This was a woman who had been beaten down by circumstance but not broken by it. Agreed, he said. All 3 points agreed. Then I will marry you, Samuel Stone. Mrs. Patterson gasped from the doorway. Lily, child, are you certain? I am certain that I have no other prospects and that Mr. Stone seems honest. Lily stood up again, squaring her shoulders. When do we need to do this? Samuel pulled out his pocket watch. It was noon. As soon as possible. We need to get you a decent dress, find witnesses, and get to Judge Morrison before 6 o'clock. What followed was a whirlwind that Samuel would remember in fragments for the rest of his life. Mrs. Patterson, swept up in the urgency and perhaps the romance of it all, declared that Lily would wear her own wedding dress, which she had preserved in a trunk for the past 40 years. While Lily was upstairs changing, Samuel ran to the general store and bought a simple gold ring, spending more than he should have but refusing to have his bride wear nothing. He also bought paper and ink and sat at Mrs. Patterson's dining table writing out the 3 promises he had made to Lily, signing and dating them. When Lily came back down the stairs, Samuel felt his breath catch. The dress was old-fashioned, with a high neck and long sleeves, but it fit her well enough, and the ivory fabric made her auburn hair seem to glow like copper in the afternoon light. Mrs. Patterson had pinned it and tucked it to make it fit, and Lily looked both terrified and determined. "You look beautiful," Samuel said, and he meant it. A hint of color touched Lily's cheeks. "Thank you." They walked together through Fort Collins to the courthouse, Mrs. Patterson and Pete the bartender coming along as witnesses. People stopped and stared as the strange procession made its way down Main Street. Samuel kept his eyes forward, Lily's hand tucked into the crook of his elbow. He could feel her trembling slightly, or perhaps it was his own nerves transmitting through to her. Judge Morrison looked up from his desk with surprise when they entered his chambers. "Stone, what is this?" "This is Miss Lily Kensington, and we are here to be married." The judge's eyebrows rose nearly to his receding hairline. "You found a bride." "I found a bride," Samuel confirmed. Judge Morrison looked from Samuel to Lily, his expression skeptical. "Miss Kensington, are you entering this marriage of your own free will?" Lily lifted her chin. "I am." "You understand the legal and binding nature of marriage?" "I do." The judge sighed and pulled out the necessary forms. "Very well. Let us proceed." The ceremony itself was brief and perfunctory, stripped of any romance or sentiment. Samuel repeated the words required, slipping the gold ring onto Lily's finger when prompted. Her hands were cold despite the summer heat. When it was her turn to speak, her voice only wavered once, on the word honor. Judge Morrison pronounced them married at 23 minutes past 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and just like that, Samuel Stone had a wife and his land was secure. They signed the documents, the witnesses added their names, and Judge Morrison stamped everything with the official seal of Larimer County. "Congratulations," he said dryly. "I hope you both know what you have done." Outside the courthouse, standing in the bright Colorado sun, Samuel and Lily looked at each other with the awkwardness of 2 people who had just legally bound their lives together without knowing the first real thing about each other. "I should take you to the ranch," Samuel said. "Get you settled. I need to get my bag from the boarding house." They walked back to Mrs. Patterson's in silence, the gold ring catching the light on Lily's finger. The older woman hugged Lily tightly when they arrived, whispering something in her ear that Samuel could not hear, but that made Lily nod seriously. The bag Lily retrieved was small, worn leather with a broken strap, tied together with string. Everything she owned fit in that one bag. Samuel's horse, a sturdy chestnut gelding named Rusty, was tied up outside the boarding house. He untied the reins and helped Lily mount up, then swung up behind her. She stiffened at the contact, and Samuel kept his arms carefully positioned to hold the reins without crowding her. The ride out to the Stone Ranch took 45 minutes, following the road north out of Fort Collins, until it turned into a dirt track that wound through grassland dotted with grazing cattle. The Rocky Mountains rose to the west, their peaks still capped with snow even in June. The Cache La Powder River glittered in the distance, a ribbon of silver blue cutting through the green landscape. "It is beautiful," Lily said softly, the first words she had spoken since leaving town. "My grandfather chose this spot because of the water and the grass. Said it was the prettiest place he had ever seen." Samuel guided Rusty around a patch of rough ground. "The house is just over this rise." The Stone Ranch house came into view, and Samuel tried to see it through a stranger's eyes. It was a solid two-story structure built from local timber, with a wide porch and a stone chimney. Not grand, but well-maintained. The barn and outbuildings were in good repair, and the corral held several horses. As they approached, two ranch hands looked up from where they were mending fence, their expressions curious. Samuel dismounted and helped Lily down, aware of the ranch hands watching. "Everyone," he called out, his voice carrying across the yard. "This is my wife, Lily Stone." The two men exchanged glances, clearly shocked, but they both pulled their hats off politely. "Madam," they said in near unison. More hands appeared as word spread, until all 12 of Samuel's employees stood in a loose semicircle, staring at the woman who had appeared out of nowhere to become their boss's wife. Samuel introduced them each by name, and Lily nodded to each one with quiet grace. "Pleased to meet you all," she said. "I hope we will work well together." After the hands dispersed back to their duties, Samuel led Lily into the house. The front door opened into a main room with a stone fireplace, comfortable furniture, and windows that let in good light. The kitchen was to the left, equipped with a modern cast iron stove. Stairs led up to the second floor. "There are 3 bedrooms upstairs," Samuel said, setting Lily's bag down. "The master bedroom was my parents'. I have been using the smaller room next to it." "You can have the master bedroom and I will stay where I am." Lily looked at him with those sharp green eyes. "That seems unnecessary. It is a large bed, is it not? We are married." "We had an agreement," Samuel said carefully. "Space and time. We did. But I am practical, Mr. Stone. If we are going to make this work, we need to start acting like we at least tolerate each other. I will take half of the bed, you take the other half, and we will maintain a respectful distance. But I will not have your ranch hands gossiping that the new bride has already exiled her husband to another room." Samuel found himself surprised again by this woman's directness. "If that is what you prefer." "It is." Lily picked up her bag. "Show me the room, please." The master bedroom was spacious, with a large bed covered in one of his mother's quilts, a wardrobe, a dresser, and windows looking out over the ranch. Lily set her bag on the bed and opened it, revealing a few changes of clothes, a hairbrush, a small leather-bound book, and a tintype photograph. "My parents," she said, noticing Samuel looking at the photograph. "On their wedding day." Samuel studied the image of a stern-looking man and a woman with Lily's same green eyes. "You have your mother's eyes. I have my father's stubbornness." Lily carefully unpacked her meager belongings, placing them in the dresser with precise movements. "Mr. Stone, I want to be clear about something. I said yes to your proposal because I had no other viable options. But I am not a charity case, and I am not going to be a burden. Tell me what needs to be done around this ranch, and I will do it. You can call me Samuel. We are married after all. Samuel, then. And you may call me Lily. Lily. He liked the way her name felt in his mouth. The woman who comes to cook and clean is named Rosa. She is the wife of one of my hands, Miguel, but there is always work to be done. The garden needs tending, the chickens need feeding, accounts need keeping. If you can read and write, the paperwork alone would be a help. I can read and write and cipher. My father believed in education, even for daughters. Lily closed the dresser drawer. I will earn my place here, Samuel. I promise you that. That first evening was strange and stilted. Samuel showed Lily around the rest of the house, the barn, the chicken coop, and the root cellar. They ate a simple dinner of bread, cheese, and cold beef, sitting at the kitchen table with little conversation. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they both prepared for bed with careful politeness, changing in separate spaces and settling onto opposite edges of the large bed with what felt like a mile of space between them. Samuel lay awake for a long time, listening to Lily's breathing gradually slow into sleep. He thought about the insanity of the day, how his entire life had changed in a matter of hours. He had a wife, a stranger with green eyes and a spine of steel, but a wife nonetheless. The land was secure. Everything he had worked for was safe. So why did he feel like he had just stepped off a cliff and had not yet hit the ground? The next few weeks established a routine that was both comfortable and awkward. Lily rose before dawn and had coffee ready when Samuel came down. She took over the garden with an efficiency that impressed Rosa, weeding and watering until the vegetables thrived. She learned where everything was kept, how the household ran, and began keeping meticulous records of expenses and income in a ledger she had requested from town. Samuel found himself watching her when he thought she was not looking. She moved with purpose and grace, whether she was feeding chickens or kneading bread. She spoke little about her past, and he did not press. They were polite to each other, considerate even, but there was a wall between them built of uncertainty and unfamiliarity. At night, they lay in the same bed, maintaining their careful distance. Sometimes, Samuel woke to find Lily crying softly in her sleep, and he did not know if he should wake her or let her grieve whatever losses had brought her to his desperate proposal. It was 3 weeks after the wedding when things began to shift. Samuel came in from a long day of moving cattle to find Lily in the kitchen covered in flour, her hair escaping from its pins, looking utterly frustrated. "I cannot get this bread right," she said without preamble. "Rosa makes it look easy, but mine keeps coming out dense as a rock." Samuel washed his hands in the basin and came to look at the dough. "Too much flour, probably. The altitude here takes some getting used to. Everything bakes differently. I am from Cheyenne. The altitude is not that different. Show me what you are doing." Lily walked him through her process, and Samuel spotted the problem immediately. "You are kneading it too much. Just until it comes together, then let it rest. My mother taught me when I was a boy. You know how to make bread. I know how to not starve when I am alone." Samuel smiled slightly. "Try again, but gentler this time." They worked together, Samuel guiding Lily's hands through the process. It was the most they had touched since the wedding, and Samuel was acutely aware of her warmth, the faint scent of lavender soap she used. When the bread finally went into the oven, Lily turned to him with flour on her nose and something like hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "You are welcome." The bread came out perfect, golden and soft, and Lily's smile was like sunrise. After that, they began talking more. Small conversations at first, about the ranch and the weather and the hands. Then deeper topics. Lily told him about growing up in Cheyenne, about her mother dying when she was 12 and raising herself alongside her father, who worked as a freight manager. Samuel talked about his parents, about learning to ride before he could walk, about the responsibility of being the last stone to work this land. "You ever feel trapped by it?" Lily asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "All that history and expectation." "Sometimes," Samuel admitted, "but mostly I feel grateful. This land has given my family everything. I just want to prove worthy of it." "You are worthy of it," Lily said quietly. "Anyone can see how much you care." Samuel looked at her, at the way the fading light caught in her auburn hair, and felt something shift in his chest. This was not just his wife in name anymore. This was Lily, with her determination and her hidden sadness and her flower-dusted smiles. It was 6 weeks after the wedding when the bandits came. Samuel was in the north pasture with 3 of his hands when they heard the gunshots. They rode back to the ranch house at a gallop, Samuel's heart in his throat. They arrived to find 2 strangers on horseback in the yard, one of them holding Lily by the arm while she struggled. The other was rifling through the house. Samuel dismounted before Rusty had fully stopped, his hand going to the pistol at his hip. "Let her go." The man holding Lily was lean and scarred, with cold eyes that assessed Samuel like a predator sizing up prey. "Nice little setup you got here. We will just take what we need and be on our way." "I said let her go." Samuel's voice was deadly calm, the voice of a man who had shot rattlesnakes and put down injured horses and done all the hard things required of ranching. The second man came out of the house carrying a bag of what looked like valuables. "Let us go, Colt. We got enough." "Not yet." The scarred man tightened his grip on Lily, making her gasp in pain. "How much is she worth to you, rancher?" Samuel drew his pistol in one smooth motion, cocking it and aiming at the man's head. "More than your life. Let go of my wife or I will kill you where you stand." For a moment, everything hung in balance. Then the second man said nervously, "Colt, he means it. Come on." The scarred man released Lily with a shove that sent her stumbling. She caught herself and ran to Samuel's side. The 2 bandits rode off at a gallop, and Samuel let them go, his arm coming around Lily to steady her. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over her shoulders and arms, checking for injuries. "I am fine. They just scared me." But she was shaking, her face pale. Samuel pulled her against his chest, his heart hammering. "I am sorry. I should have been here. You could not have known." Lily's voice was muffled against his shirt. "Samuel, I thought they were going to hurt you when you got back." "Lily." He pulled back enough to look at her face, his hands coming up to cup her cheeks. "I would never let anyone hurt you. Do you understand? You are mine to protect now." She looked up at him with those green eyes wide and something raw in them, and Samuel kissed her. It was not planned, not calculated. It was pure instinct, born of fear and relief, and something deeper he had been trying not to name. For a moment, Lily went rigid with surprise. Then she melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back with equal parts desperation and need. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "I did not plan that," he said roughly. "I know." Lily's hands were still gripping his shirt. "Samuel, I am tired of pretending this is just a practical arrangement." "So am I." "Then stop sleeping on the edge of the bed like I might bite you." Samuel laughed, surprised and delighted. "Yes, madam." That night, there was no careful distance between them. Samuel held Lily close, her head on his chest, his arms wrapped around her. They talked in whispers until late into the night, about fear and hope and the strange path that had brought them together. When Lily finally fell asleep, Samuel lay awake listening to her breathe and realized with startling clarity that he was falling in love with his wife. The realization should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. The next morning, Samuel woke to find Lily already up and dressed, standing at the window looking out over the ranch. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, and she leaned back against him with a sigh. "I used to think love was supposed to happen a certain way," she said quietly. "Courtship and flowers and pretty words. My mother told me stories about how my father won her heart with poetry." "I am not much for poetry," Samuel admitted. "I do not need poetry." Lily turned in his arms. "I need what you have given me. Honesty and protection and partnership. I need someone who sees me as more than something to be taken care of or used." "You are the strongest person I know," Samuel said. "You took a wild gamble on a desperate stranger, and you have made this into a real home." "We made it a home." Lily reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing his jawline. Together. They kissed again, slower this time, learning each other. When they finally pulled apart, Lily smiled. "We should probably eat breakfast. The hands will wonder what happened to us." "Let them wonder," Samuel said, but he released her with a final kiss to her forehead. Life on the ranch took on a new rhythm. Samuel found himself rushing through his work to get back to the house, to Lily. They began riding out together in the evenings, Samuel showing her the extent of the property, the best fishing spots in the river, the places his grandfather had camped while building the ranch. Lily proved to be a natural horsewoman, sitting her mount with confidence and learning quickly. One evening, they rode to the hill where Samuel's parents were buried. 2 simple headstones marked the graves, overlooking the river and the mountains beyond. Samuel dismounted and helped Lily down, and they stood in silence for a moment. "I wish they could have met you," Samuel said. "My mother would have loved you. She always said I needed someone who would not let me take myself too seriously." "What was she like?" "Strong. Kind. She could outwork any of the hands when she wanted to, but she also kept a garden that was the envy of every woman in Fort Collins." Samuel smiled at the memories. "She taught me to read and write, made sure I knew how to be a gentleman even though we lived out here in the middle of nowhere." "You are a gentleman," Lily said softly. "You saved me, Samuel. Not just from destitution, but from giving up on the idea that good men existed. You saved me too. I would have lost everything without you. We saved each other then." Lily took his hand, threading their fingers together. "That seems like a good foundation for a marriage." As summer deepened into July and then August, Samuel and Lily's relationship deepened as well. The awkwardness faded, replaced by genuine affection and growing love. They learned each other's habits and preferences. Samuel discovered that Lily liked her coffee strong and black, that she sang softly to herself while working in the garden, that she had a wicked sense of humor that surprised him into laughter at unexpected moments. Lily learned that Samuel was an early riser who liked to watch the sunrise, that he had a gentle touch with horses and children, that he carried the weight of his family legacy with quiet determination. They also learned each other's bodies, slowly and with increasing confidence. The physical intimacy grew naturally from the emotional connection, and Samuel marveled at how right it felt to hold Lily, to wake up tangled with her in the pre-dawn light, to see her smile at him across the breakfast table. In September, Samuel took Lily into Fort Collins for supplies. They walked down Main Street together, Lily's hand in the crook of his arm, and Samuel noticed how people smiled at them. The strange, hurried marriage had become a town legend, but seeing Samuel and Lily together, clearly in love, had turned it from a scandal into a romance. They ran into Judge Morrison outside the courthouse, and the older man tipped his hat to Lily. "Mrs. Stone, you are looking well." "Thank you, Judge." Morrison turned to Samuel. "I confess, Stone, I thought you had lost your mind that day, but I am glad to see I was wrong." "So am I," Samuel said, squeezing Lily's hand. In the general store, while Lily was selecting fabric for new curtains, Mrs. Henderson approached Samuel. She was the mother of Martha, the girl who had been engaged to the banker's son. "I owe you an apology, Samuel Stone," she said quietly. "I thought you were making a terrible mistake, marrying some stranger off the street. But anyone with eyes can see that girl loves you, and you her. Sometimes the Lord works in mysterious ways." Samuel thanked her and meant it. He found Lily and pulled her into a quiet corner of the store, kissing her despite the risk of being seen. "What was that for?" she asked, laughing. "For being you. For saying yes to a crazy man's desperate proposal. For making me happy." "You make me happy too," Lily said, her eyes shining. "So very happy, Samuel." That fall, Lily discovered she was pregnant. She told Samuel one morning in October, her hands twisting nervously in her apron. "Are you pleased?" she asked, searching his face anxiously. "I know we have not been married long and we did not plan," Samuel cut her off with a kiss. "I am thrilled. A baby, Lily, our baby." Relief washed over her features. "I was afraid you might think it was too soon. It is perfect timing." Samuel placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "A new generation of Stones. My parents would have been over the moon. I hope I can be a good mother. I do not remember much of my own mother. You will be wonderful. You are wonderful at everything you do." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter. Lily bloomed with it, her face gaining color and fullness, her body growing round with their child. Samuel found her even more beautiful pregnant, the visible proof of their love and their future. He became almost comically protective, insisting she rest more, not lift anything heavy, stay warm. Lily tolerated his fussing with good humor, occasionally reminding him that women had been having babies since the dawn of time. In March of 1883, during a late snowstorm that blanketed the ranch in white, Lily went into labor. Samuel rode through the snow to fetch the doctor and Rosa, then spent the longest night of his life pacing downstairs while Lily labored above. Her cries of pain nearly drove him mad, but Rosa kept assuring him everything was progressing normally. At dawn, as the storm cleared and the sun broke over the snow-covered mountains, Samuel heard a new sound, the thin wail of a newborn. He took the stairs 3 at a time and burst into the bedroom to find Lily exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. "A boy," she said, her voice hoarse but joyful. "Samuel, we have a son." Samuel approached with shaking hands and looked down at the red-faced, squalling infant. His son, his and Lily's son. The rush of love he felt was almost overwhelming. "He is perfect," Samuel whispered. "Lily, he is perfect." "What should we name him?" They had discussed names over the winter, but now, looking at his son, Samuel knew. "Simon, Simon Thomas Stone, after my grandfather. Simon," Lily repeated, smiling. "Hello, Simon, welcome to the world." Samuel climbed onto the bed, carefully wrapping his arms around Lily and their son. "Thank you," he said into her hair. "Thank you for this, for him, for everything. Thank you for giving me a life I never dreamed I could have." Lily leaned against him. "A family." Baby Simon thrived, growing from a tiny wrinkled newborn into a robust infant with Samuel's dark hair and Lily's green eyes. The ranch hands doted on him, taking turns holding him and making fools of themselves trying to coax smiles. Samuel discovered that he loved being a father, loved watching Lily nurse their son, loved the way Simon's tiny hand would wrap around his finger. That first year of Simon's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and first smiles and small triumphs. Samuel expanded the cattle operation, investing in better breeding stock. Lily transformed the house into a real home, with curtains and rugs and small touches that made it warm and welcoming. They hired a young woman from town to help with the baby and the housework, giving Lily more time to help Samuel with the ranch accounts. By the time Simon was walking, The Stone Ranch was more prosperous than it had been in years. Samuel credited Lily's careful management of the finances, the way she negotiated better prices for their beef, the connections she made with buyers in Denver. "We make a good team," he told her one evening as they watched Simon toddle after the barn cat. "We do," Lily agreed. "To think, 2 years ago I had nothing. Now I have everything. 2 years ago I was about to lose everything. Now I cannot imagine life without you and Simon." Lily turned to him, her green eyes serious. "Samuel, I need to tell you something. I have been afraid to say it because it felt like tempting fate, but I cannot keep it inside anymore." Samuel's heart clenched with sudden fear. "What is it?" "I love you. I am in love with you, completely and utterly. It is not gratitude or obligation. It is real and deep, and it fills me up until I think I might burst." The words came out in a rush, and Lily's cheeks flushed. "I need you to know that." Samuel pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "Lily Stone, I have been in love with you since the day you stood in Mrs. Patterson's kitchen and demanded terms for our marriage. You are the bravest, smartest, most beautiful woman I have ever known, and I fall more in love with you every single day." They kissed there in the yard, with Simon giggling at their feet and the sun setting behind the mountains. And Samuel thought about how 1.5 years ago he had been a desperate man facing ruin. Now he was a man with a wife he adored, a son he treasured, and a future that stretched out bright with promise. Time continued its march. Simon grew into a curious, energetic boy who followed his father around the ranch and helped his mother in the garden. When he was 4, Lily gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Rose, a tiny, beautiful girl with auburn hair and her father's serious eyes. 2 years after that came another son, Samuel Jr., called Sam to avoid confusion. The Stone Ranch continued to prosper. Samuel's careful breeding program produced some of the best cattle in Colorado, and Lily's management ensured they got top dollar for every head. They built an addition onto the house to accommodate their growing family, adding 2 more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Simon grew into a fine young man, responsible and hardworking, clearly his father's son. Sarah was spirited and clever, keeping her parents on their toes. Sam was the quiet one, thoughtful and observant, always watching and learning. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Samuel took Lily back to Fort Collins for a rare night away from the children, who were being watched by Rosa and Miguel. They had dinner at the hotel restaurant, a luxury they almost never indulged in, and walked the streets where they had frantically searched for a solution a decade before. "You ever regret it?" Samuel asked as they strolled past the courthouse. "Agreeing to marry a stranger?" "Never," Lily said firmly. "Not once. Do you regret asking?" "Only that I waited until I was desperate. I should have been looking for you my whole life. You found me when we both needed finding. That is what matters." Lily stopped walking and turned to face him. "Samuel Stone, I would marry you again every single day if I could." Samuel kissed her there on Main Street, not caring who saw, and remembered the terrified man he had been, stumbling out of the courthouse with his world collapsing. That man could never have imagined this. A wife he loved beyond measure, children who filled his days with joy and chaos, a ranch that thrived, a future secure. "I love you, Lily Stone," he said against her lips. "I love you too. Forever." They walked back to the hotel hand in hand, and Samuel marveled again at the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. A desperate judge's deadline, a woman with nothing left to lose, and an hour to find a solution that would change both their lives forever. The years continued to pass in the way years do on a working ranch. Busy and full, marked by seasons and cattle drives, by harsh winters and golden summers. Simon grew old enough to take on real responsibility, managing parts of the ranch operation under his father's guidance. Sarah declared her intention to become a teacher and began studying with a tutor in Fort Collins. Sam showed an aptitude for working with horses that surprised and delighted Samuel. When Lily was 38 and Samuel was 40, they had one more surprise: twin girls, Lucy and Lily Jr., who they called Little Lily to distinguish her from her mother. The twins brought fresh chaos to the household, but also fresh joy. Simon, now 17, proved surprisingly adept at soothing fussy babies. Sarah, at 13, took to helping with the twins with maternal instinct that made Lily's heart swell. Sam, at 11, treated his baby sisters with gentle reverence. Samuel would sometimes stand in the doorway of the main room, watching his family interact, and feel gratitude so intense it was almost painful. The ranch that had almost been lost was now secure for generations. The land his grandfather had claimed and his father had worked, and he had nearly lost due to a forgotten clause, was thriving, supporting not just his family but the dozen ranch hands and their families who lived and worked on the property. But more than the land, more than the prosperity, Samuel treasured the love he had built with Lily. Their marriage, born of desperation and necessity, had grown into something rare and precious. They still made each other laugh. They still desired each other. They still looked forward to the moment each evening when the children were in bed, and they could sit together on the porch, Lily's head on Samuel's shoulder, watching the stars come out over the mountains. Did you ever imagine this? Lily asked one such evening when she was 42 and Samuel was 44. All those years ago when you asked a stranger to marry you, I imagined saving the ranch. I imagined honoring my family's legacy. Samuel kissed the top of her head. I did not imagine love. I did not imagine this depth of happiness. I imagined survival, Lily said quietly. A roof over my head and food on the table. Instead, I got a love story. We got a love story, Samuel corrected. We wrote it together. Simon married at 22, bringing home a smart young woman named Emma who Lily immediately loved. They built a house on the eastern section of the ranch and began their own family. Sarah did become a teacher, opening a school in Fort Collins but living at home and riding into town each day. Sam took over the horse breeding operation and proved to have his father's eye for quality stock. The twins grew into lively, mischievous girls who kept everyone entertained. The years brought challenges as well as joys. A harsh winter when Samuel was 48 killed a third of their cattle, setting them back financially. Sam broke his leg badly at 16 and walked with a slight limp afterward. Sarah's heart was broken by a young man who courted her for 6 months before leaving for California. But through every challenge, Samuel and Lily faced it together, their partnership and love tested and proved again and again. On their 20th anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Simon and Emma and their 3 children, Sarah and her eventual husband David, Sam and his wife Margaret, the 15-year-old twins, all crowded into the expanded house along with the ranch hands and their families. It was loud and chaotic and perfect. Rosa, now in her 60s but still cooking for celebrations, had prepared a feast. Tables were set up in the yard and lanterns hung from the trees. As the sun set, Samuel stood and raised his glass. 20 years ago, he said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd, I was given an impossible deadline by Judge Morrison: marry by sundown or lose everything. I found a bride in under an hour, a woman brave enough to take a chance on a desperate stranger. What I thought was the worst day of my life turned out to be the best. He turned to Lily, who sat beside him with tears in her eyes. Lily, you saved me. You saved this ranch. You gave me a family and a life beyond anything I deserved. I love you more now than I did yesterday, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." Lily stood and kissed him to cheers and applause from the gathered crowd. "Samuel Stone, you gave me a home when I had nowhere to go. You gave me respect when I had nothing. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable. These 20 years have been the greatest gift of my life." They danced that night under the stars, surrounded by children and grandchildren and friends, and Samuel thought about the young man he had been, racing against time to save his legacy. That young man had saved the land, yes. But more importantly, he had found love in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected person. He had found Lily. The years continued their relentless march. Samuel's hair turned gray, then white. Lily's auburn lost its fire, becoming softer. Their children had children, who began having children of their own. The ranch remained strong, managed now jointly by Samuel and Simon, with Sam handling the horse operation that had grown into a significant business in its own right. When Samuel was 60, he and Lily took a trip to Denver, their first real vacation in decades. They stayed in a fine hotel, ate in restaurants, and walked the city streets marveling at how much Colorado had changed since their youth. But they were both glad to return to the ranch, to the land they loved and the family they had built. "I do not need fancy hotels," Lily said as they rode back onto ranch property, her hand in Samuel's. "I just need you and this place." "We built something good here," Samuel said, looking out over the pastures that were as familiar to him as breathing. "Not just the ranch, but the family, the love." "The best things are built slowly," Lily said, "with time and care and commitment." At 65, Samuel began to slow down, letting Simon and Sam take over more of the daily operations. He spent more time with Lily, more time with their grandchildren, more time simply sitting on the porch and watching the world go by. His body ached in ways it never had when he was young, but his heart was full. Lily was 63, still sharp and active, though she too felt the passage of years in her joints and her slower movements. But her mind remained keen, and she still kept the ranch books with meticulous accuracy. Their children worried about them, wanted them to take it easier, but Samuel and Lily were ranchers to their bones. They would work until they could not work anymore. On a late summer evening, when Samuel was 70 and Lily was 68, they sat together on the porch watching the sunset. It was the same sunset they had watched thousands of times before, but it never got old. The mountains were purple in the fading light, the river a ribbon of gold, cattle lowed in the distance, and somewhere a child laughed. "You remember the day we met?" Lily asked, her head resting on Samuel's shoulder. "Every detail. You were sitting at Mrs. Patterson's kitchen table, writing a list of places you might find work. Your dress was faded blue, and you had the most determined expression on your face. I was terrified. When you came in and made your proposition, I thought you might be crazy." "I was crazy, crazy with desperation." Samuel squeezed her hand. "Best crazy thing I ever did. I said yes because I had $4 and no prospects. I stayed because you were a good man. I loved you because you saw me as a partner, not a possession." Lily lifted her head to look at him. "Samuel, if I had one more choice to make in my life, I would choose you again. And I would choose you. Every time in every life I would choose you." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge, the same stars that had watched over them for nearly 50 years of marriage. Around them, the ranch hummed with life. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, the Hands and their families, the cattle and horses, all of it a testament to what two desperate people had built from nothing but necessity and hope. Samuel thought about Judge Morrison's ultimatum all those years ago, the impossible deadline that had seemed like a death sentence. Marry by sundown or lose the land. He had found a bride in under an hour, a woman he did not know and had no reason to trust. Yet that hasty, desperate decision had led to this. A lifetime of love, a family that spanned generations, a legacy that would endure long after he was gone. "I do not want to imagine life without you," Samuel said quietly. "Then do not imagine it. We are here now together. That is all that matters. I love you, Lily Stone. I love you, Samuel Stone." The summer passed into fall and fall into winter. Samuel's health began to fail slowly, his strong body finally giving in to the accumulated years of hard work and harder weather. Lily tended to him with the same determination she had brought to everything else in their life together, refusing to let him give up. Their children gathered, worried and hovering. Simon wanted to call doctors from Denver, but Samuel refused. "I have had a good life," he told his oldest son. "The best life. I am not afraid." What Samuel wanted most in those final weeks was time with Lily. They talked for hours about their years together, about the children and grandchildren, about the ranch. Lily would lie beside him in the bed they had shared for nearly 50 years, holding his hand and telling him stories about their life as if he did not already know them by heart. "You remember when Simon was born?" she asked one night as snow fell outside the window. "That terrible storm and you riding through it to fetch the doctor." "I thought I would die of worry before I heard him cry," Samuel said, his voice weaker now but still warm with memory. "Then I saw him and you, and everything made sense." "We made beautiful children," Lily said, tears sliding down her weathered cheeks. "We made a beautiful life." On a cold February morning just after dawn, Samuel woke to find Lily watching him with those same green eyes that had first captivated him. Outside, the ranch was waking up, hands calling to each other, horses nickering, the sounds of home. "I am not ready to let you go," Lily whispered. "I will never truly be gone. I am in this land, in our children, in every sunset we watch together." Samuel lifted their joined hands to his lips, kissing her fingers. "And I will wait for you, Lily. However long it takes, I will be waiting." "Promise me something," Lily said urgently. "Promise me this was real, that we did not just make the best of a desperate situation. Promise me we really loved each other. Lily Stone." Samuel used the last of his strength to pull her close, to look directly into her eyes. "You were the great love of my life. Every moment with you was a gift. We did not make the best of a bad situation. We made a miracle out of an impossible deadline. That judge gave me until sundown to find a bride, and instead I found my soulmate. Do you understand? You were never just the woman who saved the ranch. You were the woman who saved me." Lily pressed her forehead to his, both of them crying now. "You saved me too. You gave me a life worth living. Then we are even." Samuel died that afternoon, surrounded by his family, with Lily holding his hand and whispering words of love. He was 70 years old and had lived every one of those years fully. The ranch he had fought so hard to save passed to Simon, who would steward it with the same care his father and grandfather had shown. Lily lived for 5 more years, remaining active in ranch business and devoted to her ever-expanding family. She kept the bedroom exactly as it had been when Samuel was alive, often sitting in the chair by the window and talking to him as if he could still hear. Her children worried it was unhealthy, but Lily did not care. "I spent 50 years of my life with that man," she told Sarah when her daughter gently suggested she might want to redecorate. "I am not going to erase him now." On a warm June day, when Lily was 73 years old, she worked in the garden she had tended for half a century. The vegetables were thriving, and roses she had planted decades ago bloomed in riots of color. She stood up to stretch her back, looked out over the ranch spread before her, and felt a deep sense of peace. That night, she went to bed early, claiming tiredness. In the morning, Lucy found her grandmother had passed away in her sleep. A slight smile on her face and her hand extended across the bed to where Samuel had once laid. They buried Lily next to Samuel on the hill overlooking the river, just as she had requested. The entire town came to the funeral, along with people from all over Colorado who had known the Stones or done business with them. Judge Morrison had died years before, but his son came and told the story of how Samuel had burst into his father's office with a bride in under an hour. "My father always said it was the most romantic thing he had ever seen," the younger Morrison said. Two people who had every reason to fail, building a love story that lasted a lifetime. Simon stood between his siblings at his mother's grave and thought about the stories he had heard all his life. About a desperate deadline and an impossible choice. About a woman with $4 and a man about to lose everything. About courage and chance and a marriage that should never have worked but became the foundation of everything good in his life. "They loved each other," he said to Emma that night as they lay in bed. "They really, truly loved each other." "I know," Emma said. You could see it every time they looked at each other. Years later, when Simon was an old man himself, he would tell his grandchildren the story of how their great-grandparents met. How Samuel had 1 hour to find a bride or lose the ranch. How he proposed to a complete stranger. How that stranger said yes. How they built a love that became a legend. "So you see," Simon would say, "sometimes the most impossible situations lead to the most beautiful outcomes." Your great-grandmother Lily took a chance on a desperate man, and your great-grandfather Samuel had the courage to ask. They made a family, they made a legacy, and most importantly, they made a love story worth telling. The Stone Ranch continued to thrive, passed down through generations, each one stewarding the land with the care and commitment Samuel and Lily had shown. The story of the judge's ultimatum and the hasty marriage became family lore, told and retold until it took on the quality of legend. But those who had known Samuel and Lily knew the truth was more powerful than any legend. Two people, desperate and brave, had taken a chance on each other. They had built a marriage on necessity and grown it into something transcendent. They had proven that love could bloom in the unlikeliest soil, that commitment and partnership could transform strangers into soulmates, that the best things in life often came from the most unexpected places. And on that hill, overlooking the Cache La Powder River, two headstones stood side by side, weathered by Colorado sun and wind and rain. The inscriptions were simple, names and dates, but anyone who knew the story understood what those stones really represented. They marked the resting place of two people who had been given 1 hour to change their fate and had used it to build forever. The land remained as land does. The mountains stood eternal. The river flowed on. And somewhere in the whisper of wind through prairie grass, in the call of cattle at sunset, in the laughter of children playing in the ranch yard, the love of Samuel and Lily Stone endured, woven into the very fabric of the place they had fought so hard to preserve and had made truly their own.